A friend of mine used to say, you win some and you lose some. And I think that is really true, not only for language learning, but for anything else in life. Hi, my name is Luca from Lampariello.com, and today I'm going to talk to you about my biggest language failure in Japanese. When some people ask me the somewhat deranging question, how many languages do you speak? I often catch myself replying that I speak 13 languages. But the reason why I think that I've been learning 13 languages would be a better and more honest reply is that first, you never stop learning, not even your own native language. And second, as a matter of fact, your language arsenal changes with time because some languages that you used to speak very well before, maybe you do not speak them well anymore because you haven't been practicing them. Now let's take Japanese, for example. I started learning Japanese some 10 years ago, and truth be told, I did spend a lot of time on Japanese. I have, as you can see here, a lot of resources that I used, manga, grammar books, etc., you name it. But even then, even after starting speaking Japanese with my tutor and reading and listening, unfortunately, I've never really gotten to the point where I felt so confident that I could handle the language in any possible situation. A lot of time has gone by and I've started focusing more and more on other languages, and I've put Japanese a little bit on the side, and I would say that technically I do not speak it anymore in the sense that it would be very difficult for me to make a video in Japanese now. Now, if you think about it, the interesting thing is that this has happened to other languages as well. Unfortunately, if you speak a bunch of languages, it's also very difficult to maintain all the others. And for example, Swedish and or Mandarin Chinese are languages that I do not practice anymore on a daily basis. But the difference is that for Mandarin Chinese or for Swedish, I've reached a level where I have acquired a skill. That is the skill of speaking, having conversations, using the language. So I know that if I had to make a video in Swedish, or if I had to make a video in Mandarin Chinese, or if I had to have a conversation for that matter, I could go back to listening, reading, and practicing a little bit, and that would go back very quickly. While with Japanese, that would be much more problematic because I guess that I've never really developed this fluency or this capacity of manipulating the language as I want. So first of all, it's a liberation for me to admit that Japanese has been kind of a failure, but the most important part of the video is to talk about the lessons I've learned and the lessons that are going to be useful for me if I start learning Japanese again, and for you if you decide to learn Japanese or if you have failed in any other language. So I've been doing some thinking and some pondering and trying to understand why I had failed with Japanese, and here are some of the reasons why I think I have never reached the level I wanted to reach. I always say that one of the most important steps when it comes to starting learning a language is choosing the right resource. Unfortunately, in the case of Japanese, I stuck to the very same resource that I use all the time, which is Asimil, but in this case, Asimil was not what I expected. The sentences and the dialogues were too complicated from the very beginning, and as a consequence of that, point number 2, I applied my bidirectional method, but it did not work the way I expected, meaning that I was trying to translate back and forth from Japanese into Italian and from Italian to Japanese, things that were too complicated for my mind to deal with from the very beginning. As a consequence of that, and that is the third point, I started thinking in a way that it was too complicated. I started filtering everything through the Italian language. So let me give you an example. Japanese has a very, very different structure when it comes to syntax. That is the way you arrange sentences. In Italian, for example, or in English, if you want to say something like, I want to go to Tokyo, well, in English you say, I want to go to Tokyo. In Italian you say, voglio andare a Tokyo. It's exactly the same structure, subject, verb, particle, and destination. In Japanese though, you would say, Tokyo ni ikitai, which means Tokyo, particle of movement, I'm going to the city, want to go, or to go want. And this is a very simple statement. Imagine if you say something like, I want to go to Tokyo because I heard, or I've heard, that it's a great city. In Italian, you would say something very similar. Voglio andare a Tokyo perché ho sentito che è una grande città, una bella città. But in Japanese, you would say Tokyo, particle, great city, I've heard because, Tokyo, particle, I want to go, I think. So this gives you the idea or an idea of the fact that if you filter everything through your native language, it's going to take you seconds to think about a very simple sentence. And the longer the sentence, the worse this gets. So a combination of the wrong resource, Asimil, I don't think it was the resource I should have chosen. The bidirectional translation applied to very long and complicated and uninteresting sentences caused me to think and want to think in a way that was too complicated from the very beginning. I never got rid of that. So every time that when I moved to conversations with my Japanese tutor, Saeko, I just tried to speak, but it took me 2-3 seconds for each sentence, and my brain was fuming. As a consequence of that, I was very discouraged from the very beginning. And despite a great amount of time and books that I used to Japanese, I never got rid of this complication, overcomplication, and I never made my communication smooth and to the point, which was quite discouraging. So the combination of the wrong material from the very beginning, the wrong approach, because I think the bidirectional translation is great, but not applied to Asimo in that way, and this tendency of overcomplicating everything was kind of, getting in the way. But I think that if I think about it, there's also a couple of other factors that really made a difference. And the first is that I've never gone to Japan. Truth be told, Japan is not exactly around the corner, so it's not that you grab a ticket and you go there. But I think that if I had gone to Japan, if I had breathed the Japanese air, the Japanese culture, the way people talk, the way they act, the way they speak, the way they live, the way they eat, the way they drink, I think that the moment I would have gotten back to Italy, I would have had another great boost of motivation, and I've never done that. And you can tell yourself, okay, Japan is far, I don't have the money, I don't have the time, but I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of Japanese around in Europe, be it tourists or people who live in Europe, that I could have gotten in contact with, and I haven't done that. Yes, I have come into contact with Saeko, my Japanese tutor, and we had great conversations, but it was always through Skype. I think that getting to know people in real life and experiencing life and circumstances with Japanese would have made a great difference. So here you have a combination of the wrong approach, what you do by yourself, but also I think that in the extreme case of languages that are particularly difficult, particularly exotic, you need some extra boost, and maybe I didn't have the courage, maybe I didn't have the money, I don't remember at that time, maybe I didn't have the time or the energy to go to Japan or to create a Japanese reality, which I'm sure would have made a great difference. I still remember in 2012 or in 2013 that after learning the language for a little bit, I really started thinking, maybe Japanese is not for me. Maybe Japanese is going to elude me for the rest of my life. Luca Lampariello, the guy who learns all these languages, and he's failing miserably at learning Japanese, just can't get through his thick head. And then I started thinking about the learning process. I started reading a lot of books about neuroplasticity and about our capacity to learn pretty much anything. And I told myself, no, that's not because Japanese is not for you. That's not because your brain structure is not good for learning this kind of language. I really believe that. The truth is that you have to, when you fail at something, it's because you probably used the wrong method and you were not motivated enough, you didn't have the right circumstances. So right now, I know that at some point in the future, it can be in 1 year, it can be in a couple of years, this depends on the number of languages I'm gonna learn and the life circumstances, I will go back to Japanese and I will reuse these lessons in order to learn it properly right now. And you can do exactly the same. If you think that you failed at learning a language because for some reason you were not good enough or because you're not motivated enough, remember that everything flows, everything changes. The brain structure you have today is not going to be the brain structure you're going to have down the line. And whenever you fail or whenever you think you made a mistake, just use these so-called mistakes to improve upon what you're building, because you can accomplish anything. I can accomplish anything. You can accomplish anything for any and in any language. So you might be wondering, okay, Luca, you're going to start learning Japanese again. What are you going to do differently than you did before? Well, for starters, I'm not going to use Asimo. I'm going to find a resource that has compelling content that I find interesting, and possibly that is relatively simple. And third, that is comprehensible to me. It can be a bilingual book. It can be a book just in Japanese, but that has explanations in English or any other language that I can understand. And then I'm going to, when it comes to speaking and producing the language, I'm going to scale back, and I'm going to make sure that I communicate from the very beginning with very simple messages. Grabbing the example that I was illustrating before, instead of trying to say, I want to go to Tokyo, I want to go to Japan, I want to go to Osaka because I've heard that, just simplify it, go to the bone and say, I want to go to Japan. I heard that Tokyo is beautiful, or just Tokyo is beautiful, Tokyo is great. Very simple snippets of language, because if you communicate in simple messages, and that is what kids actually start doing when they speak the language, you will simplify the thought process in the language, and your mind will not go and resort to this defense mechanism of using the structures of your own native language. I'm pretty sure that this has happened to you as well. When you try to speak a foreign language and you try to sound refined and educated, you tend to use words or sentences that are too complicated, and you end up trying to say something that, if you don't have the arsenal, if you don't have the weapons, the linguistic weapons to convey, then you're just gonna get stuck. That's exactly what happened with Japanese. So I am pretty confident that I'm not gonna make that mistake again. And even if my mind will tell you, Luca, my adult mind will tell you, Luca, you will sound very simple. Simple does not mean simplistic. Einstein used to say that simplicity is beauty, or beauty is simplicity. So at first I will accept, and you have to accept, that it's important to speak in snippets, in simple messages, and later down the line I'm going to learn to connect these snippets or these messages. So I want to go to Japan, and I like Japanese. I want to go to Osaka, and then you will learn to put these together. I want to go to Japan. That's why I want to learn Japanese, and so on and so forth. And if you learn the connectors, then you're going to build the language better, and you're going to sound more refined, etc. That's exactly what Japanese kids have done. They haven't started with complicated sentences. They have started from the base. Of course, now that I know that I know how to deal with input and I know how to deal with output, I would say that that's not enough. I think that the fuel that is going to propel my Japanese in the long run is actually falling in love with the Japanese culture, seeing Japan. I really want to go to Japan. That's why I'm thinking that no matter when I'm going to learn Japanese, the moment I decide when I'm going to learn Japanese again, or when I'm going to start learning Japanese again, I will pay a visit to beautiful Japan, so that when I come back I will have stars in my eyes filled with Japanese culture, with the Japanese way of life. And I think it's very fascinating, and it's going to help me a lot learning the language in the long run. If you like this video, please put a like, subscribe if you haven't done so, and click on the link in the description box. There's an amazing article waiting for you there. The fourth thing that I wanted to tell you is that if you can and want, please share with us your language failures, why you failed, And if you've started learning that language again, if you failed and you've given up on that language, please share the stories, because I think that it's important to share not only our successes, but also the things that we do less well, so that others, not only yourself, but also others, can benefit from them. See you very soon on YouTube, and as always, happy language learning.